Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time for 13th Gen. Good afternoon and welcome to Turbo Tortoise Tech. If you're new here, I'm Reese of the 4-piece variety or Walkie Triple XL. And this last week, I have been, well, actually a little bit before that, I actually got my media kit quite a while ago. Didn't realize I could have shown you this quite a while ago. But the Intel media kits, I just had to start off, is something that they do that really just completes the experience as a tech reviewer to have such a nice information pack with delivery like this. I mean, this is the box that it comes in. You open up two compartments over here, in which case you get a plaque and then your two test samples, being your 13600K and your 13900K. It's just a really nice experience. They did something similar for 12th Gen launch, and I just got to give big ups to Intel for that. It's something I absolutely love about doing these reviews. It's just when you get the kit the first time, that opening up an experience and pulling the chips out for the first time, it's just a really, really nice experience to work with Intel from that facet. The plaque as well is just really cool. It's got the full set of your P-core and E-core splits on there, your max frequencies, your caches as well. It's just really, really nice setup. So looking at that now on your screen, you may notice, quite a lot of E-cores. That's basically the idea with this generation, is just E-core madness. They've just gone and dialed up the E-cores to 11 so that your multi-threaded processing now follows suit with that insane single-core performance. And the 12900K and 12600K aren't slouches in multi-threaded performance. They quite comfortably came up to first-gen Threadripper levels, even on a budget chip like a 12600K in multi-threaded was getting up there. But now they're dialing things up to 11. So what have they done? They've increased the caches for the E-cores. They've split them off so they've got their own cache for level 1 and level 2 per chip as well, per processor core. They've increased the other, for the P-cores, they've also increased per core how much level 2 cache you are getting. And then they've increased the unified level 3 cache layer. So a whole bunch of extra cache thrown at the chip is one. The second bit is they've increased the core clocks, even on the E-cores themselves. They clock actually lower now. They do seem a bit more dynamic with that, which is really, obviously really good for your power saving and stuff. But they now clock higher as well. Their turbo boosts have been turned up. The E-cores even hit over 4 gigahertz now, which is absolutely fantastic, isn't it? And then the P-cores similarly are hitting higher and higher clock speeds. So the way that they've gone after generational performance improvement isn't just in like a single core performance. I think they're sort of tapped out on their current setup, and they're going to have to look at like an IPC gain to really push that forward. So what they said obviously was, hey, well, we actually have increased the efficiency enough that we've got enough headroom in the same wattage to increase the efficiency core counts and then create more caching system and a better clock speed to them. Now they've also kept DDR4 around, which is something that I absolutely love, so that if you have bought a previous gen Z690 board with DDR4, then you'll still be able to use that into the current generation. I don't know about Z690 boards coming out with that sort of support. We'll have to see. It'll probably be like the B760s and more the mid-ranges that will have that crossover, is what I'm going to assume will happen, because now the DDR4 or 5 pricing is going to be coming down quite a lot as the demand increases. It should then settle as well, because there's going to be a lot more competition, obviously, in the market for that. Alrighty, so let's get into the test bed setups. So for the 12600K, kept it Z690 torpedo board. We did 5200 mega transfers at CL38, which is the default for that Adata XPG kit. And then obviously we had it water cooled, but with a 240mm rad, because that's the 12600K in particular, I find particularly easy to keep cool. Even an air cooler, like a high-end air cooler, will do the job in most cases, honestly. So the 240 was perfectly fine for that. But when we went over to the other chip, well, the 13900K, I found that I desperately needed to upgrade that cooling. So luckily I had a nice Deepcool Castle 360 on hand. So the performance results and stuff you're seeing are with a 360. It is quite hot here in South Africa at the moment. We're looking at about between 25 and 30 degrees. it's the beginning of summer. So things were tested in quite a warm climate as well, just for reference. Both of them ran the 3070 Ti as well, our trusty Supreme X. So there is a slight difference in the motherboards. Obviously, I wanted to test new chipset, or, you know, obviously the 12600's best chipset, etc. environment versus the new best to see performance results in, and if there is an increasing the memory, etc., giving the 13600K really the best fighting chance it can to beat the 12600K. Let us start off then with Cinebench R23. This is really indicative of the amount of cache increase and the core increase that we're getting with 13th generation. This is really sort of a TLDR in a lot of ways for the rest of the performance testing that you're going to see. It absolutely crushed the previous generation's cores. Obviously, more cores is more better. In this case, it's exactly what we're sort of exemplifying here. I really like the core increase on the 13600K because it just moved it out of being like mid-range, like a really good mid-range gaming chip, into like a low high end, is basically the way I'm perceiving it based on those results. The 13900K absolutely annihilates the 12600K in a Cinebench run. It's more than double. It was 14 or 15% was the outcome of it. So even though they didn't double the amount of cores, the performance is more than double. And that's really why I think for creators and stuff, you guys should be salivating. To further drive home that point, let's just have a look at Blender quickly. My Blender scores for 12600K became corrupted, unfortunately, but you can see for the 13600K and the 13900K over there with the comparison, there is no real comparison. It's a 67% on average, let's say. So let's say 65% is a soft estimate performance uplift between the two chips. So more is more, even though they sort of have the same setups, etc., etc. When you look at a multi-threaded workload or a rendering type of workload, you are going to get significant gains, which is exactly what you want to see. It means that the product scaling and stuff has been done really nicely. So for guys that are getting into like development cycles and that need 3D rendering, etc., and CPU-based rendering, there's no doubt that the Intel's 13900 non-K SKUs, for instance, are going to be absolutely golden for that. Now looking at a little bit more gaming, the stuff that you guys probably want to see. Actually, we'll start off with 3D Mark, just to further emphasize those gains. Even in certain areas, the 12600K, like in Firestrike, was actually faster on the graphics score than both of the 13600K and 13900K. The CPU scores are incomparably different. So it doesn't matter what sort of rendering you're going to be looking at, physics, etc. The 13th gen is going to be better at every single punch. So good job on Intel for that. Now let's look though at some rasterizing standard gaming performance. Generally, there is performance uplift. More clock, more cache. It should be the case. We aren't getting an IPC gain though, like I said. So it's going to be clock for clock. It's going to be dependent on your cooling. It's going to be dependent on your RAM. Every other part in it is going to make a difference to that because the architecture and stuff is not that much different from the 12th generation. But more is more, and it definitely shows performance increase. One weird area was where I was playing with DLSS. I had to like recheck my results a few times over because it was woefully the other direction towards the 12th generation. And that I can only assume is because the DLSS AI itself hasn't had enough time to work with these CPUs to get the most out of them. It was kind of a dead heat in Metro, which was interesting, but in Cyberpunk you can see, I mean, it's like massively better, like 20 FPS is quite a lot. I mean, on that scale, it's like 15 to 20% performance increase. So yeah, quite a lot of work that obviously DLSS and stuff needs to still do, but in a premium AAA game, for instance, even like Need for Speed Heat, without any of the DLSS stuff, when traditional rasterizing is used, there's a significant performance uplift that's coming out of these 13th generation chips. So in conclusion, what do I think of this launch from Intel? I really like it. As a content creator, someone who has demand of multi-threaded processing, this is fantastic. If you're buying a new PC now as a streamer, for instance, I mean, what, the 13600K, it's 8+8 or 6+8 now, okay? That is absolutely incredible. You're getting 4 extra efficiency cores when compared to previous generation. You can see how much the multi-threaded has moved ahead. So your ability to, for instance, game and stream off of the same system is now way more accessible than it was even on the previous generation. The previous gen did a good job, like 12700, right, is where we were sort of aiming, because that had the right amount of P cores and E cores in order to do that job. But now you can step down a whole layer. You can get a 13600K and you can game and stream off of that. I think for content creators, this launch is one of the best for desktop pretty much since Threadripper. This is, I was like, Intel, you need HEDT to really hit that multi-threaded. They were like, sit back and wait, Sony, we got you covered. And then they dropped this 13900K. And then you go over 30,000 points in Cinebench and absolutely annihilate a second-gen Threadripper. Without any of that extra like requirement of having a massive motherboard that costs twice of what the other normal sort of desktop chips and stuff would cover, I would see high-end B760s when they come out with 3900s, and those being excellent for your development sort of cycles. So gaming, I think they kind of are strapped in their current situation. They need to do something like 3D caching to really get like a massive performance uplift, the way AMD did with the 5800X3D. I think if you've got that, or a 12900K, even a 12600K, I think upgrading might be a little bit foolhardy. But if you are currently in a position where you're upgrading from a really old system and you want to get the latest and greatest, then I can't discourage you from doing that, because your gaming is going to be slightly better, but your multi-threaded and every other function of the PC is going to be so significantly better that you probably are going to sit with this on like a 4 to 5 year even rotation of life cycle. One thing though, like I said, is the heat. That is one thing that is quite prevalent. The 3900K would casually bump on the bottom end of 90. Even with a Deepcool castle with a really high fan curve on it, it's going to hit that point pretty readily. The 13600K still hit low 70s, even with a Deepcool castle on. One of the best coolers that I've ever reviewed or tested. So do think about, or do be prepared to spec water cooling with those options. But I think if you're buying in that bracket, spending like 1,400 Rand or equivalent of like $100 on a pretty good air cooler or radiator, let's say it's probably closer to $150 or like 2,300, 2,400 Rand locally, right? For a really good 360 like a Deepcool Castle or even the LS series from them is what I would suggest to pair up with these chips. Anything else? Yeah, you're going to be creating a space heater. I really like the new motherboard as well. Something I haven't really touched on is that new chipset. The upgrades include PCIe lanes on the board. I believe there's as many as 28 now. So if you're looking at it for a storage solution, multiple Nvme drives, you aren't going to be taking away from those 20 lanes that are present. I think it's 20 lanes, PCI Express 5 lanes, but I know the chip itself has its own PCI Express 5 lanes, and then the chipset actually carries the PCI Express 3.0s and 4.0s. But there seems to be way more than there were before. Before you were almost strapped into like 16 plus 4, and that was it. So nice improvements there. We'll have to see how the new chipsets and stuff develop, but I can tell you on the baseline of the performance, yes, there is a performance uplift. It is noticeable. The multi-threaded is absolutely astounding. And yeah, that's basically the bullet points of this presentation. If you're looking for a new CPU and you wanted to get a 12th gen, the 13th gen is just going to be that much better. Anywho, that is all I have for you on this 13th gen Intel launch. Until next time, hope you guys stay safe, keep well. If you have enjoyed this review, please do hit us up with a like and subscribe. And I will see you on the flip side.